The diner was crowded that afternoon. The summer sun pressed against the windows, making the air inside sticky. Tasha moved quickly between tables, her apron tied tight around her waist, a smile on her face, and a notepad in her hand. She greeted every customer politely, poured coffee with steady hands, and refilled plates without a complaint. She had done this job for years, but today, something felt different. At one table, a group of young men laughed loudly. One of them leaned over, whispering something to the others. Their eyes flicked toward Tasha, then back to each other, smirking. She tried not to notice. She had learned long ago that not everyone was kind. Some people stared at her scars, her marks, as if they were a joke. Tasha's scars ran across her arms and shoulders, faint but noticeable. She kept her sleeves long whenever she could, hiding them from curious eyes. Today, though, she had rolled them up. It was hot, and she had not expected anyone to stare too closely. But as she moved from table to table, she could feel their eyes on her. Whispers followed her steps. She paused for a moment, pretending to clean a table, and felt a twinge of anger. Then, a new customer walked in, an older man, with silver hair and a weathered face. He sat at a corner table, quiet, sipping his coffee. Tasha approached with a polite smile. "Good afternoon, sir. What can I get for you?" The man's eyes, sharp and steady, scanned her for a moment. Then they landed on something just peeking from under her sleeve. A small tattoo, barely visible, but distinct. The man froze, his cup trembling slightly in his hand. Tasha noticed him staring and felt a pang of unease. She had learned to expect judgment from strangers, but something about this man was different. He didn't look angry or rude. He looked shocked. "Excuse me," he said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "Can I ask you about that tattoo?" Tasha's heart skipped. Her first instinct was to cover it, to brush off the question, but she hesitated. There was something in his eyes, something that told her this man knew more than he should. "It's nothing," she said softly, trying to sound casual. The man shook his head slowly. "No, that looks very familiar. I've seen a tattoo like that before." Tasha's hands trembled as she wiped down the table, her mind racing. She had kept her past a secret for years. The scars, the tattoo, her military history, she had hidden it all. Only a few close friends knew. And now this stranger seemed to recognize her story before she even spoke. Across the diner, the group of young men continued their laughter, oblivious to the tension building near the corner. Tasha moved closer to the man's table, trying to stay calm. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've seen this tattoo before. During my service. I know that unit. I think—" He stopped, swallowing hard. "I think we may have crossed paths a long time ago." Tasha's breath caught. She had expected curiosity, maybe even mockery. But recognition? That was something she never anticipated. Her mind flashed back to memories she had buried deep, long days in uniform. Harsh training, the battles they had fought, the friends she had lost. A small bead of sweat ran down her temple. Not from the heat, but from the sudden tension. Around them, the diner continued its noise, the clatter of plates, the murmur of voices, but it felt distant, almost unreal. The focus was on the small corner table and the man, who had suddenly recognized a part of her life she had never shared. Tasha straightened her shoulders, her gaze locking with his. She didn't know what was about to happen, but one thing was certain: this moment would change everything. And for the first time in years, Tasha felt the weight of her past waiting to be revealed. The diner's clatter continued around them, but Tasha felt a quiet tension at the corner table. The man, Mr. Harris, kept his eyes on her tattoo, as if it held a story only he could read. Tasha's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. She had hidden this part of her life for years, and now it was staring back at her. Alive and impossible to ignore. She tried to breathe normally. I don't talk about that part of my life, she said quietly, her voice steady but soft. Mr. Harris nodded slowly. I understand, he said. But I've seen that symbol before. I know what it means. You served, didn't you? Tasha's chest tightened. Her mind raced through the memories she had buried, deep long nights in uniform, heavy boots marching through mud, the roar of helicopters overhead, the deafening sounds of war. Every scar on her arms had a story, and every story was one she had tried to keep hidden. Yes, she whispered finally. I served. The words felt strange, unfamiliar. She had said them aloud only a handful of times in her life. The memories flooded back her unit, the battles, the friends she had lost. She swallowed hard, afraid the emotions would betray her in front of this stranger. Mr. Harris leaned back slightly, studying her carefully. I think we may have been in the same unit, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. Years apart maybe, but the same unit. That tattoo. It's unique. Only a few of us have it. Tasha's eyes widened. She had never expected someone to recognize it. Not in a small diner, not in her quiet civilian life. For years, she had walked through the world unnoticed, carrying her scars and memories alone. And now, this man, a stranger at first glance, knew her story before she even told it. Her mind flashed to the past again. She remembered the first day she had received that tattoo, a small symbol etched near her wrist, a mark of belonging, of courage, of sacrifice. It had been painful, yes, but meaningful. Each line on her skin had a purpose, a story of survival and strength. And yet, now it felt exposed, revealed to someone she didn't know. The diner noise seemed distant. Tasha could hear only her heartbeat and the man's careful breathing. Around them, customers continued their chatter, some still whispering about her scars, but she hardly noticed. The focus was on this moment, the recognition, the connection, the past colliding with the present. Mr. Harris finally spoke again, his voice gentle. You don't have to tell me everything. I wanted you to know I see you. Not just the scars, not just the tattoo. I see you. Tasha blinked, a lump forming in her throat. No one had ever said anything like that to her. People had stared, judged, mocked, but never this. Someone finally saw the person behind the scars. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Thank you, she said. Her voice trembled slightly, but it carried strength. Most people don't. They just look at the scars. Mr. Harris nodded, his eyes softening. I know, he said. That's why I had to say something. You've been through more than most can imagine. And yet, here you are. Standing strong. Tasha's fingers brushed against the edge of her apron. For the first time in years, she felt a small spark of pride. Maybe her past didn't have to be hidden. Maybe the scars, the tattoo, the memories, they weren't shameful. They were proof. Proof of courage. Proof of survival. And in that quiet moment at the corner table, with the summer sun spilling across the diner, Tasha realized something important. She didn't have to face the world alone anymore. Someone had seen her. Someone understood. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let the world see her too. The whistle of the diner door pulled her attention back to reality. New customers walked in, unaware of the quiet exchange that had taken place. But Tasha didn't care. She felt something shift inside her. The past was heavy, yes, but now it had a witness. And that made all the difference. The diner hummed with its usual rhythm, clinking plates, low conversations, and the occasional laughter of children. But in the corner, the air felt different. Tasha stood behind the counter for a moment, her hands gripping the edge. Her mind still replaying the brief conversation with Mr. Harris. There was something about him. Something that made her pulse quicken. She hadn't expected anyone to recognize the tattoo. Not here, not in this quiet diner far from the battlefield she had once known. And yet, there he was, an older man, sitting at the corner table, staring at her with eyes that seemed to see right through her. Tasha forced herself to breathe. "What is it?" she whispered to herself, as if asking for courage. Mr. Harris finally broke the silence. "Do you know what this means?" His finger hovered over the small tattoo on her wrist, just visible beneath her sleeve. Tasha shook her head slowly. "It's my unit tattoo. That's all," she said, keeping her voice steady. The man's gaze intensified. "No, it's more than that. I served with that unit many years ago. And this tattoo, I've only ever seen it on someone from my team. I think we may have shared the same paths once, though at different times." Her heart thumped in her chest. She had trained, fought, and survived alongside many people, but she had never expected someone here, in this ordinary diner, to know her history. I don't understand," Tasha admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Harris leaned forward, his eyes locking on hers. "I knew a team like yours. Brave soldiers, determined to survive against impossible odds. And this mark, it belongs to them. To you." Tasha's mind flashed back, dust rising from the desert, helicopters thundering overhead, the cries of her friends as they fought together. Every scar on her arms, every ache in her bones, carried a story she had never shared. And now, here was someone who knew. Around them, the diner carried on as usual. Some customers glanced at the corner table, curious about the intensity, but no one understood what was happening. To them, it was just an ordinary conversation. To Tasha, it was a reunion with a past she had tried to leave behind. Mr. Harris reached out, slowly and carefully, not touching, but pointing at the tattoo again. "I never thought I'd see this again. Not in a place like this. You survived. You're still here." Tasha swallowed hard. "I survived. But I don't know why I'm here," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Why now? Why in this diner?" The man smiled faintly, his eyes misting over. "Sometimes life brings people together at the strangest moments. Maybe we were meant to meet again. Maybe it's not about the past, but what we do next." Tasha's pulse quickened. For years, she had hidden her scars, avoided questions, and kept her past locked away. But something about Mr. Harris's recognition felt different. It was not judgment, not fear, not mockery. It was understanding. The summer sun cast a soft glow across the diner, highlighting the tiny beads of sweat on her brow, the faint scars on her arms, the tattoo that had drawn him here. And in that glow, Tasha felt a spark of courage she hadn't felt in years. Maybe you're right," she said softly, her voice gaining strength. "Maybe it's time I stop hiding." Mr. Harris's eyes softened, and he nodded. "It's never too late to be seen, Tasha. Never too late to be recognized for who you really are." The clatter of plates and the murmur of the diner continued, but for Tasha, the world had shifted. Something inside her had changed. She had expected strangers to stare, to mock, to judge. But instead, she had found recognition, and in that recognition, she felt the first taste of something she had forgotten long ago. Pride. The diner felt unusually quiet as Tasha approached Mr. Harris's table again. The clatter of dishes, the low hum of conversations, all seemed to fade into the background. Her hands trembled slightly, gripping the edge of the counter. She had hidden her past for so long, but something about this man, something about the way he looked at her, made her feel as though hiding was no longer possible. I don't usually talk about this," she began, her voice soft. Mr. Harris shook his head gently. "You don't have to, not if you don't want to. I needed to know that the person behind the scars is still here. That you're okay." Tasha swallowed hard. She had spent years burying memories that refused to stay silent. Nights haunted by screams, long days under the sun with nothing but the weight of responsibility, the faces of friends she had lost etched into her mind. Her scars were more than skin deep, they were her story, a story she had tried to lock away. But now, sitting across from Mr. Harris, she felt a strange calm. Someone understood. Not in words alone, but in recognition, in acknowledgement of what she had endured. "I was part of a unit," she finally said, her voice trembling but growing steadier with each word. "We trained hard. We fought together. Some of us didn't make it. And the scars. These scars." She lifted her arm slightly, letting him see the faint marks. "They're all I have left from that time." Mr. Harris leaned in, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know," he said quietly. "I recognize the tattoo because I saw it on my friends too. The same symbol. The same courage. You belong to something bigger than yourself. And seeing you here, standing strong, it means more than I can say." Tasha blinked back tears. For the first time in years, someone spoke not with pity or judgment, but with genuine understanding. Her heart ached and swelled at the same time. "Why are you here?" she asked, curiosity mixing with caution. "Why recognize me now after all these years?" Mr. Harris smiled faintly, a glimmer of memory in his eyes. "Because I needed to know that the people who survived, that the people who carried these marks, that they're still here, still alive, still living. And maybe I also needed to apologize for not being there, for not knowing, for everything we couldn't control back then." Tasha felt a lump in her throat. The apology wasn't for her. It was for the memories, for the shared past, for the things that had been lost. She reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the table, and suddenly, it didn't feel awkward. It felt like connection. "You don't understand," she whispered. "Most people stare at the scars, or the tattoo. They think it's strange, ugly, or painful to look at, but you see it differently." "I see courage," Mr. Harris said firmly. "I see a survivor. I see someone who has faced the worst and still stands. That's something worth noticing, worth respecting. Not mocking." Tasha let out a long breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The weight she had carried, the judgment, the isolation, the fear suddenly seemed lighter. For the first time, her past felt like a story, not a burden, around them. The diner's hum returned, but Tasha barely noticed. She was aware of only two things, her scars and her story, finally seen, and Mr. Harris, who had recognized both with eyes full of understanding and respect. You really understand," she said softly, a small smile forming. "I do," he replied. "And now maybe it's time you understand it too. That your story isn't something to hide. It's something to carry proudly. It's who you are." Tasha nodded, her pulse steadying. Pride, courage, and a strange sense of peace began to bloom inside her. She had hidden for too long. And now, for the first time, she felt ready to be seen, not just by Mr. Harris, but by the world. The diner's noise swelled around them once more, but it no longer mattered. In the corner of that small, ordinary diner, a quiet connection had been made, one that would change Tasha forever. The diner felt different that day. The sun outside was warm, streaming through the windows, but inside, a quiet energy buzzed that hadn't been there before. Tasha moved between tables with her usual calm efficiency, but something had changed. She carried herself differently now, proud, steady, almost fearless. The incident with Mr. Harris had left a mark deeper than any scar. For the first time, someone had truly recognized her, not just the scars or the tattoo, but the woman behind them. And that recognition had sparked something inside her. Something she hadn't felt in years, confidence. As she refilled coffee cups and wiped tables, she noticed glances from some of the customers who had whispered or laughed at her scars before. Their expressions had shifted from curiosity or judgment to something more cautious, even respectful. A few avoided eye contact, unsure how to react. The atmosphere in the diner had subtly changed, and Tasha felt it immediately. Mr. Harris sat quietly at his corner table, a gentle smile on his face as he watched her work. Occasionally, he would nod, acknowledging her with silent encouragement. Tasha felt a surge of warmth and pride. She wasn't alone in this moment. She had been seen, truly seen, and it mattered. At one table, the group of young men who had whispered and smirked earlier were now quieter. One of them leaned toward his friend and whispered, "Did you see that? She served. Look at her tattoo." Tasha noticed the comment. She didn't feel anger this time. Instead, she felt a quiet satisfaction. They were beginning to understand, even if only a little, the strength behind what they had once mocked. "Coffee, sir?" She asked the man at the table with a steady smile. The man blinked, surprised by her calmness and confidence. Yeah. Thanks," he muttered, glancing at her tattoo, now fully exposed under the rolled-up sleeve. Even the manager, who had often scolded her for being too quiet or reserved, paused as she walked past. There was something in the way she carried herself, now a quiet authority, a strength that couldn't be ignored. Tasha moved to refill a water glass and caught a reflection of herself in the diner window. The scars on her arms were visible, and so was the tattoo that had sparked this chain of events. She didn't look ashamed. She didn't feel afraid. She felt alive. Mr. Harris finally rose from his chair and walked toward the counter. "Tasha," he said, his voice warm and steady, "I just want to say, you should be proud. Most people don't have the courage to carry their past with such dignity. You do. And that's worth acknowledging." Tasha's lips curved into a small smile. "Thank you," she said softly. The words carried more weight than she realized. As he returned to his table, Tasha noticed something remarkable. The customers who had been mocking her were now watching, some with curiosity, others with newfound respect. Some even whispered apologies to each other for judging too quickly. The diner, once ordinary and indifferent, now felt like a stage for her courage. A little girl sitting with her mother pointed at Tasha's tattoo. "Mom, look. She has a drawing on her arm." Her mother smiled. "That's a special mark, sweetheart. It means she's brave." Tasha's heart swelled. She bent slightly to smile at the girl, who grinned back. In that moment, she realized something powerful. Her story wasn't just about her. It could inspire others, remind them that scars, visible or invisible, were not shameful, but proof of strength. The diner carried on around her, but Tasha moved with a new rhythm. Every step, every gesture was a quiet declaration. She had survived. She had fought, and now she had been recognized. Respect and admiration weren't things she had asked for. They were things she had earned. And for the first time in years, Tasha felt completely free. The next morning, Tasha walked into the diner with a quiet sense of purpose. The sun was just rising, casting a warm glow across the empty tables. She took a deep breath and tied her apron around her waist, feeling the familiar fabric against her skin. But today was different. Today, she didn't feel like hiding. For years, she had carried her scars like a secret. Each mark on her arms and shoulders told a story of battles fought, pain endured, and friends lost. She had learned to cover them, to avoid questions, to keep the world at a safe distance. But after her encounter with Mr. Harris, something inside her had shifted. She had been seen, truly seen, and the recognition had unlocked something she didn't know she had. As the first customers of the day arrived, Tasha moved with confidence. She greeted them warmly, her smile genuine and steady. Her scars, usually hidden beneath long sleeves, were now visible under her rolled-up sleeves. And for the first time, she didn't care who noticed. They were not marks of shame, they were symbols of survival. A regular customer, an older woman who often teased her gently about her quiet nature, paused as Tasha approached her table. "Morning, Tasha," she said. Her eyes flicked to Tasha's arms. Those are your scars, aren't they?" Tasha nodded, her voice calm. "Yes, ma'am. They're part of my story." The woman smiled, a mixture of surprise and admiration in her eyes. "Well, I never knew. But now, I respect them. And you." Tasha felt a small warmth bloom in her chest. This was new, being recognized for her strength rather than judged for her appearance. Every interaction, no matter how small, reinforced the sense of pride she had been missing for so long. As the morning passed, Tasha noticed more changes. The young men who had once whispered and mocked her now nodded politely when she approached their table. Some even complimented her, awkwardly but sincerely. The diner's atmosphere had shifted. Respect replaced judgment, curiosity replaced ridicule. And Tasha moved through it all like someone reborn. Mr. Harris returned in the afternoon, sitting in his usual corner with a quiet smile. He had become a silent anchor for Tasha, a reminder that someone understood her past and respected her journey. When she walked by his table, he nodded, and she returned the gesture. It was a small act, but it held immense meaning. During a slow moment, Tasha found herself cleaning the counter and thinking about her life. She realized that the scars she had once wished to hide were now her strength. They reminded her of resilience, courage, and survival. They reminded her that she had endured more than most could imagine, and she was still standing. Young girl came in with her mother and waved shyly at Tasha. "Hi," the girl said, pointing at her arm. "Your marks are like a story. Are they real?" Tasha knelt slightly to meet the girl's eyes. "Yes, they're real," she said gently. "And they tell a story of strength. Everyone has their own story, and we should be proud of it." The girl's eyes widened, admiration shining in her gaze. "I want to be brave like you someday," she whispered. Tasha's chest swelled with a mixture of pride and humility. She had never imagined her scars could inspire anyone, especially a child. And yet, here they were, proof that her past, once a source of pain, was now a source of empowerment. As the day came to a close, Tasha paused at the diner's entrance, looking out at the city streets bathed in golden light. She no longer felt the weight of judgment pressing down on her. The scars on her arms were no longer a secret. They were a testament to her courage, her resilience, and her survival. For the first time in years, Tasha felt whole. She had faced her past, been recognized for it, and embraced it fully. She understood now that her story was not something to hide, but something to carry proudly and perhaps to inspire others. And in that quiet moment, Tasha knew she was ready for whatever came next. The diner had grown quieter by the late afternoon, the rush of the lunch crowd long gone. Sunlight poured through the windows, painting warm patterns on the floor. Tasha moved between tables with ease, her steps steady and calm, her scars and tattoo now proudly visible. Each movement felt lighter, freer, as though she had finally left the weight of the past behind. Mr. Harris was still at his usual corner table, sipping slowly from his coffee. He glanced up as she walked by and gave her a small, knowing smile. Tasha returned the smile, a mix of gratitude and newfound confidence in her eyes. After finishing a table, she took a moment to step outside. The warm breeze brushed her face, carrying the faint sounds of traffic and laughter from the street. Mr. Harris followed, stepping gently onto the sidewalk. "I'm glad you're embracing it," he said quietly, nodding toward her arm. "Not many people have the courage to wear their past openly." Tasha looked down at her tattoo, tracing the small lines with her fingers. "It used to feel like a burden," she admitted. "Something I had to hide. But now, it feels like proof. Proof that I survived, that I fought, that I'm still here." Mr. Harris nodded. "Exactly. And you should be proud. You've earned the right to carry your story openly. It's a story worth telling." For a long moment, they stood in silence, two soldiers bound by the invisible threads of shared experience. Memories of long nights in the field, harsh training exercises, and the battles they had endured together, or in his case, parallel to hers, flashed through their minds. There was a respect, a quiet reverence, in the air between them. "I never thought I'd find someone who understood," Tasha said softly. "Not just my scars, or the tattoo, but the person behind them." "And now you have," Mr. Harris replied. "And maybe you'll find more people who see you for who you truly are." A small group of children playing nearby caught sight of Tasha's tattoo. One of the girls ran up, pointing excitedly. "Look, that's like a superhero mark," she exclaimed. Tasha laughed, kneeling slightly to meet the girl's eyes. "Maybe it is," she said warmly. "But it's not magic, it's courage." The girl's eyes sparkled, and she ran back to her friends, repeating Tasha's words. Tasha watched them go, a soft smile on her face. She realized something important. Her story had power beyond herself. Her scars, her past, her survival, they could inspire, teach, and even heal others. Mr. Harris cleared his throat. "You've come a long way, Tasha. And yet, I feel like this is just the beginning. There's so much more you can do with your story." Tasha looked out at the street, the sunlight glinting off the pavement. She had hidden for too long, lived in fear of judgment, and allowed her past to remain silent. But now she understood that strength came not from hiding, but from being seen, being acknowledged, and embracing every part of herself. "You're right," she said, her voice steady and strong. "This is only the beginning. I want to help others. People who've faced battles of their own. Maybe even other veterans. Maybe anyone who feels hidden, unseen." Mr. Harris's eyes softened. "That's the mark of someone truly brave," he said. "Not just surviving, but using their strength to lift others." Tasha smiled, feeling the sun warm her face. She looked down at her tattoo once more, tracing the familiar lines, and felt a sense of pride unlike any she had ever known. The scars and the tattoo weren't reminders of pain, they were reminders of resilience, courage, and survival. As she stepped back into the diner, she felt lighter than she had in years. Customers glanced at her, some smiling, some curious, but none judgmental. She moved through the diner with ease, a quiet confidence in her stride, ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time, Tasha knew it. She had faced her past, embraced it, and now it would carry her into a future filled with hope, purpose, and strength. Her story was no longer hidden. It was hers, and it was powerful.